Welcome to the World Philosophy and Religion podcast with Dr. Marc Gafni. In today's episode, we are talking about time. How does the past, present, and future all interweave with one another? Now, you may think for a second, time is sort of a meta concept. Why is it important to talk about time? But throughout this episode, you will realize that our understanding, our perception of time is actually one of the most foundational pieces to how we live our daily life. For example, at the end of this episode, Dr. Marc Gafni will give you a 3-step process of how to actually go back into events that have happened in your past and perform a healing on them so that your future can be guided in a much better direction. But you can only understand how to do that type of practice if you first understand the fundamentals of how time is actually functioning. So we're going to take a deep dive into all of that in this episode. So this is going to be an epic ride. Enjoy this episode of the World Philosophy and Religion podcast with Dr. Marc Gafni.
We're gonna take a very, very, very wild and unimaginably important journey today, which is utterly essential to everything we're doing, right? On 1,000 different ways, and it's a kind of new step forward. So David, let's start there. Give us the code, man.
This week's evolutionary love code. The evolutionary God is the possibility of possibility. Evolutionary integrity is faithful to the memory of the future, even as it is faithful to the memory of the past, always living in the infinite eternity of the present, which contains all the past and all the future in its transformative crucible. The evolutionary God is the possibility of possibility. Evolutionary integrity is faithful to the memory of the future, even as it is faithful to the memory of the past, always living in the infinite eternity of the present, which contains all the past and all the future in its transformative crucible.
Wow. David, thank you. No, it's beautiful, David. Thank you. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to understand the quality and nature of time. And I tried to introduce something last week, which we called spiral time. Spiral time. And we did it kind of ecstatically. It was a kind of an ecstatically urgent week last week. The reason I got into this topic of time is I've been thinking about it for 30, 40 years. I've talked about it, many times in different contexts. But I've never fully put it together all the way. The 9th element of story, we're doing these 10 elements of story. The 9th element is temporality, the quality of time, and the nature of time that lives in story. Because stories take place in time. And so my relationship to time, understanding where I am in the stream of time, locating myself in time is utterly essential. And I'm somewhat oppressed in this moment by limitations of time. And I'd like to just talk to you for like 3-4 hours about time. That's actually the right way to do this. But I'm going to go briefly for a little while and see if we can get there. Okay. So 1. Ready? Here we go. 1. The movement from the pre-modern to the modern in science is the movement from classification to measurement. Aristotle classifies different kinds of plants, different kinds of animals, different kinds of people. Kepler, Galileo, and Newton indirectly measure time. And the measurement of time creates modern science in a fundamental way. And modern science begins as dualism and ends as materialism. So Kepler, Galileo, Newton, they are dualists. So they've got a circle. You split the circle in half. Top half of the circle is God. Bottom half of the circle is world. World is empty of God. God reaches into world. Top half of the circle reaches into the bottom half of the circle to make stuff work. But Kepler, Galileo, and Newton, let's take Newton for an example, split his own focus. So he was deeply concerned with and committed to the occult and to spirit and to the divine, and looked at the bottom half of the circle as being fundamentally natural, removed the supernatural from it. So they made a fundamental split between the supernatural and natural. That was a mistake. That was one of the great mistakes of dualism. But in any case, the 17th century dualists slowly turned into the 19th century materialists, because the materialists said, oh, the top half of the circle, whatever's going on there, it's not relevant to this world, so we'll lop off the top half of the circle, and what's left is materialism. So the linear notion of time, the notion that time is measurable, and that time is yesterday morning, then yesterday afternoon, and then yesterday late afternoon, and then yesterday evening, and then the night, right? And then the morning, and then now, and then this afternoon, right? These are all points on a line. Does that make sense? And the future is not yet. And the past has disappeared. And the present is this ephemeral moment which barely exists, which connects past and future. In other words, we have no location in time. Does that make sense? We're not located in time. Does that make sense, everyone? Tenderly? So just tender. So can you get that? And I don't have location in time. The past is gone. The future is not here. And the present is but the blink of an eye. So where am I? Does that make sense? I don't have location in time. Can you feel that? Who can feel that, right? There's no location in time. Okay? Just feel that. Just kind of feel that quality. Just got to feel that quality. Don't just go slow with me, okay? Now, there is a response, which is, okay, there's this forever presence. That's the be here now response of my friend Ram Dass or Eckhart, the power of the now. There's this now that excludes the future and the past. There is no future and past. There's just the now. That's problematic. There is a future and a past, right? And a now that excludes, right, as totally explicitly argues from the power of the now, right? He says, oh, there is no future. There is no past. They're gone. All there is the present. That's not true. That's obviously not true. That you got to trust your own lived experience of reality. There is 1,000%. Right? Where I know the eternal now, we're going to get to the eternal now, right? But actually the eternal now is wrongly presented, right, as excluding the past and the future. It doesn't. Now go slow with me. Let's go slow. But first, just be in the experience. Let's beware of just throwing words out there. Let's just go slow. In our actual experience of reality, our day-to-day experience, right? Our day-to-day experience. Our day-to-day experience is the moment's past, the future's not yet, and the past has disappeared. Now, that's not wrong. That's actually important. That's why I want to slow down the conversation. Let's slow down the conversation. Slow it down. Get rid of the slogans. Right? Just be here right now. Don't tell me about the infinity, the now, or the eternal now, or the present now. Just be here right now. Be in the experience right now, in this second. Right now. Last second's gone. Just slow it down. Slow it down. Just kind of feel it. Okay? You have to be able to first feel the ephemeral and fleeting nature of the now. You don't want to bypass that. It's a problem with too much kind of new age and too much kind of, fundamentalist spirituality. We don't actually feel what's happening. What the existentialists did was they said existence before essence. Feel what's happening right now in your experience right now in this very second. Feel the ephemeral nature of time. Feel it. Like actually feel it. Now, the ephemeral nature of time is not just problematic, it's also holy and sacred. The ephemeral nature of time is what we've called linear time. That's linear time. Linear time is time that moves on a line. And this experience of linear time is actually very, very important, right? The experience of linear time is the past is gone, and that's really important. The future's not yet here, and all you have is your decision that you're making right now in this ephemeral moment, which lends that decision gravitas. It lends that decision dignity. And this experience of time, what we're going to call the line of time, has a storyline, right? It has a plot line, right? It's not just the materialist notion of time, right? It's not just the measured time of materialism. It's not just that. It's something deeper. Actually, linear time also, and I want to add this from last week, we didn't get to this last week, linear time also is not reducible to desiccated materialist time. Linear time, the line has eros. The line has value. The directionality of time, the plot line of time is important, right? Time is moving, and we move in time animated by first principles and first values. So I don't want to go, that's like, let's not go to any kind of eternal now. Let's just stay in time, linear time, slow. Linear time means time has a plot line. There's a journey in time. Chapter 12, book of Genesis, Abraham travels. He goes from one place to the other. What's that called? That's called a journey. A journey means you can get someplace. There's a destination. And you go to your destination because that's your unique destiny. And destiny is a plot line. Destiny is a journey in time. Does that make sense? It's a big deal. Let's go slow with me. Slow, gentle, tender. Okay? Go slow with me. So Abraham, the whole notion of Abraham is, Abraham says, oh, time's not just a circle. The old ancient world said time's just a circle. Eliade writes his book, The Myth of Eternal Return. The wheels of the bus go round and round, but the bus doesn't get anywhere. Right? There's no actual journey. There's the simulation. There's the illusion of a journey. Abraham says, I'm going on a journey. Abraham hears a voice. And the voice is, right, travel in time. Take a journey. Follow the plot line of your life. Reach for a destiny. You can change. You can transform. The line bisects the circle, right? And history begins. History, his story. Story that takes place in time. Story that's reaching for a new human and a new humanity. The very notion of a new human and a new humanity is not the myth of eternal return. It's that time is going somewhere. Does everyone get that, my friends? So when we talk about, for example, the 4 Big Bangs, those of you who have been here before know the first Big Bang is the first Big Bang, the birth of the physiosphere, the world of matter, and then matter triumphs in life, the second Big Bang, the biosphere, and then the biosphere goes through all of its levels of development, right, and consciousness, and triumphs in the depth of the self-reflective human mind, right, what the Russians called in like 1910, 15, 17, right, they called it the noosphere, right, a particular school of Russian thinkers who were very important, right, evolutionary spirituality, early guys, right, they called it the noosphere, right, the depth of the self-reflective human mind. But then it doesn't just keep going round and round, it's a line. It's not, okay, now we're in the human world and we just keep going in cycles in the human world. It's going somewhere, right? So that's the 4th Big Bang. Does that make sense? And the 4th Big Bang is the emergence of something new. So the very notion of emergence and the very notion of evolution, right, tells us, I can clarify desire, that evolution is desire itself, and desire is reaching for a new emergent, and a new emergent is a function of the evolutionary line, which is the evolutionary story, which is linear time, and that's part of human dignity, right? And the first 5 elements of the 10 elements of story, right, that story is causative, right? Actions make a difference. A. B, there's direction, there's a plot line, right? C, that plot line's animated by desire, right? And then D, that desire, when clarified, is always desire for value. And E, number 5, it's not just value, but it's deeper value, more value, right? A line, a direction, a progression. That's the dignity of story. That's the dignity of linear time that Bergson didn't understand well enough, by the way, right? And many of the contemporary philosophers of time didn't understand, right? And as linear time is not just the spatialized time, right, of a desiccated materialism. No, linear time is evolutionary time. It's evolutionary messianic time. It's time that's moving towards a new possibility. It's moving towards a new conversation. Evolution is a divine face, and divinity is the possibility of possibility, right? And so linear time births the possible human. So that is linear time. Now, what's the weakness of linear time? So linear time has 2 major weaknesses, minimally, really 3. What's the first weakness of linear time? Okay. So all of us, no one's excluded. There is no person who's a Buddha outside the circle. We're all in the circle together, right? You get that? Right? We're all in the circle together, right? You with me? So in the circle, we all make mistakes. We all make mistakes. And sometimes we make serious mistakes, right? Real mistakes, we make mistakes. We mistake, we misunderstand. We have lapses, right? We fall. Right now, it doesn't mean we're all equal. There are different levels of attainment. We're not all equal. It's not this facilitative leveling of differences that pretends like it's not doing that. No, there are hierarchies of attainment that are real. And some people have this obsession, right? I've had people with me like, I'm equal with you. That's like their obsession. I'm equal with you. Well, maybe you're not. Right? There are hierarchies of attainment that are real. It doesn't mean that anyone's perfect. It means there are hierarchies of attainment. There's hierarchies of transformation. There's hierarchies of gnosis. There's hierarchies of kindness. There's hierarchies of love, right? There are things that are more than other things, right? More and less are real categories in the world, right? That was Sam Harris's point when he compared, right? He compared the popular versions of classical Islam to the popular versions of classical Judaism and Christianity. And Harris said, these things are not equal. And everyone freaked out. How could you say they're not equal? They've got to be equal. And Harris said, well, they're not. Just read all the texts. Forget about whether Harris was right or wrong, right? But the point is, people were furious with him for making any sort of hierarchy. Aren't hierarchies. There are hierarchies, okay? So let's go deep with me for a second, okay? Let's go deep. So people make mistakes, and some people make more mistakes, and some people's mistakes are less dramatic and others are more than dramatic, but everybody makes mistakes, right? Did everyone get that? Everybody makes mistakes. Mistakes are real, right? And they can be serious. Now, here's the thing. Generally, people are making the same mistake again and again. They keep saying the same thing again and again, right? And, very few people are brave enough to have someone in their immediate circle that can challenge them. And often we pretend to be challenged. We pretend to take feedback. We're like the great feedback takers, but we're really not. We take out of our circle anyone who can truly challenge us and challenge our storyline. And if there's really someone like that, right, we break away. We can't face that. We can't be in relationship to that. And by the way, that's one reasons why teaching is important. The function of the teacher in society is important, right? And the function of the teacher can be a personal teacher. It can be a religion at its best, the best progressive version of a religion, where I'm actually brought face to face, right? And there's a place in which I can't find my way out, right? And I've had dear friends, they could always find their way out, right? They had it all like very elegantly choreographed, but they could never face actually like the genuine challenge. And why can't people face it? Because they're shamed. It's actually profoundly shaming, right? To actually feel that I keep making this fundamental mistake, this fundamental egoic drive, right? This fundamental narcissism that keeps coming up again and again. It's very painful. So we're shamed. So let's say we mess up, we lapse, we make mistakes, and let's say we have a recursive pattern of mistakes, right? One master said, only the greatest souls in the world make new mistakes. It's very rare for a person to make a new mistake. That's a Gewalt. I made a new mistake. That's great. Very rare to make new mistakes. Generally, we make the same mistakes again and again and again. It's the same pattern. Does that make sense, everyone? Now, that's extremely painful. So what do I do in relationship to that? What do I do? You with me? What do I do? What do I do in relationship to those very real lapses and mistakes? So I've got a number of possibilities. You ready? Here we go. Possibility 1. I deny them. Possibility 1. I deny them. They're not true. I do it in very elegant ways, but denial. That's 1. 2, I cover them over with pseudo-eros. I don't deny them. I don't say they're wrong. I just ignore them. So first is denial. 2 is I ignore. 3, I medicate them. I medicate them in some way. Right? And the amount of inappropriately dispensed, there's appropriately dispensed psychiatric medication, but the amount of inappropriately dispensed kind of regulatory psychiatric medication, right, is part of this. I medicate it. I can't actually look at my pattern of mistakes, right, that live deep inside of me because I'm shamed. Or 4, I deconstruct the field of value. I say value is not real, so there's no ontological mistakes that can be made. There is no ultimate mistake because there's no right takes. Everything is, right, ultimately, since value is not real, there's nothing I'm really held accountable for because I don't really count. Since I don't really count because value is not real, I can't be accountable. And so I actually move for a more subtle postmodern nihilism. Even as I'm acting for the sake of the world, I don't really believe that there's any real mistake. So I actually retell, right, the story of the world, right, to avoid ever having made a real mistake, right? Or number 5, I project. Okay, so let me give you like an example of projection. Like, right, I'm a bad guy. I've done bad stuff, right? I've actually done things that are cruel, right, to people. I've acted cruelly towards people, towards my peers. I've hurt people. I've caused people to bully other people. I've done bad stuff. I actually still know that that's bad, right? I still have access to it. I can feel it, but I can't actually look at myself. I can't own it. I'm not willing to be displeasing to myself, right? And that's the core of the people of the lie is they can't really see their patterns. They'll create a whole pattern to explain other people, to avoid actually seeing what they're actually doing, their actual fundamental egocentric narcissism. They won't see it. They just won't see it. Right? So the extreme example is this Hitler-esque example. Right? So what does Hitler do? He feels this evil inside of him, but it can't be inside of him because he's in denial. Okay? It's an extreme example. Understood. But since he can't own the evil or the terrible injustices that have come from him between ages 10 and 20, right? Or the sadism, whatever it is, he can't own it. He projects it onto the Jews. Does everyone get that? He projects it. He feels there's evil, but it can't be inside of him. So he projects it outside. That's called projection. In other words, I'm ultimately power hungry. I'm not really a lover. And so therefore, I believe that people who say that they are lovers are really power hungry also, because I can't own my own power hungriness, so I project it right onto the people around me. Does everyone get that? Right? Or the gay Christian fundamentalist preacher that can't own the fact that he's gay, so he's in denial, so he's always giving sermons against being gay, because he sees all these, right, devil horned gay people all around him, right, because he can't own, right, his own allurement, right, to men. Okay, so let's go deep for a second. So why is it that way? Why do we only have these kind of 5 or 6 responses to shame? Why are we stuck? Why are we stuck? We're stuck because we did these violations yesterday. Did you get that? Yesterday. This happened yesterday. And the day before, and the day before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. This happened yesterday. And there's no way to get back to yesterday. I can't get back. I can't fix it. There's nothing I can do to change it. I can pretend to change it. I can decide I'm going to do better in the future. But doing better in the future doesn't change the past. Does everyone get that? I can't change it. If you can't change yesterday, so you're stuck with this script of this recursive pattern of lapse, of fall, of collapse, right? Of violation. Does everyone get that? What do? It's devastating. It's devastating. You can't fix it. So you need these strategies, right? Medicate, right? Project, deny, right? Cover, right? etc. Right? Like, huh? Or what's your other strategy? Be utterly depressed. Break down. As the most sensitive people go into depression and break down, meaning they manage not to deny, they don't medicate, right? They don't project, they don't cover up, they just sit in the utter pain of it and are devastated. That's the other choice. Does everyone get that's the devastation choice? Why? Because you can't fix it. Why can't you fix it? Because time is a line. And if time is a line, you've got no way of going backwards. Does that make sense, anyone? Who's got that? It's huge. Meaning the fundamental structure of society today is there's no way to go back. There's no way to fix it. Time is a line. So we're more psychologically aware in some sense than we ever were, right? At least in certain ways. And yet, there's nothing we can do. We can go to our therapist, right? For time immemorial, we cannot fix it. So we are drenched in shame. I have like tears in my eyes. I can't possibly tell you how important it is to get that. It's such a big deal. Now go with me the next step. Who's up for the next step? Who's up for the next step? We up for the next step?
If you're enjoying this deep dive teaching with Dr. Marc Gafni, then I have some fantastic news for you. We have 3 amazing upcoming opportunities where you can dive even deeper with Dr. Marc Gafni into teachings just like this. So the first opportunity is a new 4-week course coming up with Dr. Marc Gafni on the pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic framework. Now, this is a map for helping you transform your inner wounds and conflicts into wonder. The pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic framework applies to literally every dimension of your life, and it helps you move from a state of naive innocence and clarity in life to then running into the real complexities and difficulties of life, where life starts to feel way too intense to handle. And the question is, how do you not go back to a naive innocence where you're not actually fully aware, but how do you not get stuck in this tragic phase where life feels terrifying, scary, and confusing? And how do you move past those two into the post-tragic, where you are able to actually hold the complexity of life and also respond with maturity and clarity? So that is what this course is all about. It's a 4-week deep dive course, and you can find out more by clicking the link in the description. The second opportunity we have is a workshop coming up with David and Claire from the Unique Self Institute. This workshop is all about discerning your unique risk. Your unique risk is this calling that you feel inside of yourself that you know you really, really want to do, and your life wouldn't feel complete unless you actually take this risk and try this thing. But it's very scary, and it's hard to get clarity and really define what our unique risk is, because it involves us usually having to face off with the parts of ourselves that we're afraid to share or show with the world and others. So this workshop is an hour and 15 minutes where you will be taking a deep dive with David and Claire from the Unique Self Institute so that you can figure out what is your unique risk, and you can start to get a taste of the clarity and what life will be like when you can fully understand what it is that you're here to do and what the risk is that you must take in order to do it. By getting this clarity, your life will become an epic journey of knowing, okay, this is what I'm here to do, this is what I want to do, and as you get in alignment with that, then the journey of your life can truly begin. So that's option 2. And the amazing news is that you can get access to both of these courses by joining our online community. So if you come to the pre-tragic, tragic, and post-tragic course, click join the course, you'll see that there are 2 ways you can join. The first is a one-time course purchase, and the other is to join our community, save money, and you will also get on-demand courses that have been pre-filmed. You will get access to a bi-weekly book club. You will get access to a daily prayer and chant practice, as well as these live courses with Dr. Marc Gafni and the live workshops with the Unique Self Institute. To join that, it's a $100 one-time fee and then $70 a month after that. This is an opportunity to get $70 a month, which is usually at $100 a month, because if you join this course now, then you will get a nice discount. So definitely come to this page, join the community, and you will get access to both of these events. The final thing I want to let you know about is our big live in-person event called the Crossing Mystery School. This is the time where we all come together and gather in Holland, Europe, for a deep dive 5 days of intensive study with Dr. Marc Gafni, Dr. Christina Kincaid, and a whole team of other amazing teachers who are there to guide you into the most profound evolution of yourself. I cannot recommend these 5 days more. All you need to do if you're interested is come to this page and say, get the details, add your email below, and our team will reach out to you with the details on what this event really is and how you can get involved. If you have any questions about what a mystery school is, simply come to the page that is linked in the description below and watch this video where Dr. Marc Gafni describes everything. So those are the 3 upcoming opportunities. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to listen through those with me. Again, the best thing to do right now is to go join our online community, because you will get access to both of these amazing courses for just such an amazing price. So check those out. The links are in the description below this video, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this episode with Dr. Marc Gafni.
Here we go. 2. What is the fundamental contribution we said last week of the last 120, 130 years? It's this realization that not only do we self-inflict through our own lapses and our own mistakes and our own collapses, but we are inflicted on, we are wounded. Right? Melanie Klein. Right? We are, in some fundamental sense, prisoners of childhood. We're hurt. Even if we have what Winnicott called good enough parenting, there's a fundamental lack of attunement. Right? There's a fundamental gap between parents and children. Right? There is an entire realm of what we now call attachment wounding. And we call it, it's a school of object relations theory and kind of attachment theory. And notice that both of those words, this is interesting, both of those words are mechanical words. Attachment theory sounds like Lego, and object relations sounds objective. But of course, that's because psychology was trying so hard to be scientific that it refused to actually acknowledge that it was actually dealing in the currents, right, of erotic subjectivity. So object relations is actually all about subjectivity. It's all about the relationship between, right, early caretakers, mother, possibly father, caretakers, and the child, and the level of embrace and attunement and even adoration allurement that does or doesn't exist, right, between, let's say, the mother and the child, for example. But we call it object relations because we don't want to actually acknowledge what we're talking about, or we call it attachment theory. But this notion of attachment theory, this notion that we can be wounded in early childhood, that we are, Melanie Klein sometimes talks about being survivors of childhood, which I think is extreme and problematic. And Harry, I don't know if you're here, Harry, we've talked about Melanie Klein before, and you've talked about her importance. I want to honor that. But at the very core, there's this realization, right, and it starts with Freud and Breuer, right, this realization, wow, oh, these women, when was it? 1895, right? They published their studies in hysteria, and they say, oh, these women actually aren't hysterical, and all these symptoms they have of blindness and, epileptic kind of seizures and depression and catatonic states. All of these are actually based on past trauma. It's a great realization, right? And out of Freud and Breuer and a number of other vectors emerge this major realization about early childhood, right? And modern therapy is, as Martin Seligman pointed out in the first chapter of his book, Homo Prospectus, and you should read better the original essays that it's based on, were written with 4 other people, that actually all modern psychology is about addressing the past. Let's turn towards the past. Right? Everyone with me so far? Now, how do we address the past in modern psychology? And we're about to get to the second major issue with linear time, the second tragedy of linear time. So how does modern psychology, right, address the past? So I'm just going to give you an example, okay? I can give you an example. So let's say you're doing inner child work. You're doing inner child work. Everyone who's heard of inner child work? Anybody? Anyone heard of inner child work? Anybody? Any inner childs here? Okay, let's feel each other. Okay, so we've done our inner child work. Okay, here we go. I've mentioned before that my parents are Holocaust survivors, and they were quite prudent about finances. And so in the little private day school I went to in first Massachusetts, a preschool, and then Columbus, Ohio, right? Everyone had lunch boxes. Does anyone remember lunch boxes? You had like these fancy lunch boxes. So my parents thought that lunch boxes were a little expensive. So they got paper bags. Okay, now that might sound like nothing, okay, right? And then maybe we get anyone have a violin? We need a couple of violins here to make this work. We need violins. Okay, a couple of violins. Let's take out our violins, right? So everyone walks in. I can remember this, but I can remember it right in front of me. Everyone walks in. Everyone's got these really cool lunch boxes. Batman and Robin and, Blazing Saddles was a big thing. There was a Blazing Saddles lunchbox I can see. And I had these paper bags. And everyone kind of looks at me and says, whoa, why do you have a paper bag? And I could go on with the story for another 20 minutes, but there were like a whole series of those things, right? There were a whole series of things that were very traumatic for me. I didn't go to Little League and, learn how to hit a baseball, and my pants had patches on them and they were too short, and a whole series of kind of, age 4 or 5 earlyhood childhood stuff. And, my mom, right, who's a wonderful person, I just published her book, which we can, I just published and wrote an introduction to her book, and mad blessings to my mom, who's a wonderful person, but she in those early days, as she writes in this book, was very, very much, in the shadow of the Holocaust, where she was just tortured in a quite brutal way. So when she would get mad at me, right, she would say that it was kind of my job to, heal the Holocaust. And when I would do something that kind of didn't measure up from her standard, I would then be cast as someone who was going to fail, right, to heal the Holocaust and defeat Hitler. Now, it's not that easy to be 4 years old and be accused of Hitler's success. That's not so good, right? So, and by the way, you guys can all do the psychoanalysis later, right? Don't bother doing it now. Oh, that's why he's trying to save the world. Yeah, I got that. Okay, good. Next, okay? So the point is, my friends, okay? The point is, that's traumatic. So let me go back to my 4-year-old and pick up my 4-year-old and hold my 4-year-old, right? And tell my 4-year-old, you're not responsible for Hitler's victory. You're a good 4-year-old living in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and you're a good boy. And the kids that are making fun of you, because of your paper bag and your lack of a lunchbox, et cetera, they don't actually see you, and you're a good boy, and I love you, and I got you, and I got your back, and I'm holding you. Does everyone get that? Does everyone get that move? Okay, here's the problem with the move. Okay, it's a nice thing to do. It could even be cathartic, as Aristotle describes theater, but in the end, it's theater, right? In the end, I can't go back to that place that I was wounded. It actually lives in me in a very, very profound way. And how do I go back? Right? In other words, I want you to get this. So in other words, we've discovered in the late 19th, 20th century, the utter centrality of wounding in early childhood. So much so that we've realized that early childhood wounding, right, actually can derail your life. That actually, if you're not embraced in a certain way, right, according to like massive longitudinal studies, your life can go off the rails in very serious ways. That's not true for everyone. And there's ways we can transform it. But actually, there's, for many, many people, that can be devastating to your life long term. So what do we do about it? Well, we go back and try and hold the inner child, or we do exposure therapy, or we do, an entire toolbox, right, of therapies that go back and essentially reenact those moments of trauma and change the scene. The only thing is, right, both the therapist and the client both know that it's make-believe. Does everyone get that? We're making it up. In other words, that's the entire school of early therapists who created this stuff were all materialists. Freud was a materialist. There's no sense of a world in which this actually works. It's theater. And theater, as Aristotle said, is cathartic. And many of the therapists talk about the catharsis. But it's still theater, and we know it's theater, and we know it's make-believe, and we know that you actually can't go back in that same way, right? You can't go back into time and actually change what happened. And it's the same way you can't go back and change the mistake that you made. Does everyone get that? The same way you can't go back and change the mistake, you also cannot go back, says linear time, and change the utter profound engraved wounding, right? The engraved wounding on your body, the samskaras or the scars, right? That are all over your body, that live so deeply in your memory, even when you deny them, are actually there, and they're shaping you all the time, and you're desperate for reasons you don't know why, and you feel empty and desiccated for other reasons you don't know why, and you've done all the early childhood work of all the kinds, and you still feel pretty desperate, and now you can add a new dimension of shame because you're shamed for not having healed. How many people know that third dimension? There's a new dimension of shame. I'm shamed for not having healed. Do you get what I'm talking about? Wow, I've done everything. I've done the work with the bullying. I've done, right, every possible trauma. I've invested shitloads of money in all this. I've been doing it forever. And now I've got this new shame, right? It's the shame of refusing to heal. Oh my God. Does everyone get this? And this is why the recidivism rate. Does everyone get what I mean by a recidivism rate? Right? The rate of failure, essentially. The failure of therapeutic modalities is unimaginable, and no one talks about it. Right? And of course, it's very difficult to measure, and it's very difficult to supervise, right, therapeutic modalities, so it's quite hidden that they're failing. But actually, right, so it's not that they're irrelevant, and they're important to do, and yet the early gaping emptinesses, right, still remain. Right? And so that's the second reason that linear time by itself is insufficient. Did you get that? Does everyone get that sense? In other words, because linear time traps me in the temporal myopia of the present. I'm trapped in the prison of the present. I can't hear the call of the future. I'm not going to talk about that today. But today I want to focus on, I can't get to the past. The past is gone. So I can't heal, ultimately, the wounds that were done to me. And I can't heal the kind of stain or violation, right, in my own interior, which comes from the pattern of dramatic and serious recurrent and recursive loops of mistakes before which I'm shamed. In both of those ways, I'm drenched in shame. And that is the tragedy of linear time. Linear time is critical. It's important. It's sacred. We talked about it. We don't want to jettison linear time, but it's fundamentally limited in these two very dramatic ways. And that's why we understand as a moral imperative, as an imperative of love, right, of Eros value itself, we need to actually deepen our experience of time. And here Bergson got some of it, I mentioned last week, but he didn't really get the core of it. Right? The core of it really comes from the sources that Bergson was reading, which is from the depth of the interior sciences of the lineages themselves. And particularly here, I want to focus on the lineage of Solomon. So in the lineage of Solomon, I would say the most central idea, which is a constant demand, a constant imperative, right, a constant injunction, a constant form of activism, a constant movement within the self and within time, is what's called TESHUVAH, teshuvah. Maybe we can get that in the chat box. Teshuvah. TESHUVAH. Big letters. Give me big letters. Give us some big letters here, okay? Is that okay? Give us some big letters, okay? Teshuvah. So teshuvah is badly translated as penance or repentance. But it's not penance or repentance. It's not just a flagellation over yesterday. It's not just a remorse over yesterday. Right? Rather, teshuvah is literally the return. It's the journey of return, right? Which allows for the crossing. Okay? In other words, teshuvah is the ability to shatter the apparent irreversibility of time. Bergson couldn't quite get there. Bergson still assumed, when I mentioned Bergson last week in his essay on duration, Bergson still assumes time's irreversible. That's not correct. At its very core, there is a quality of time which is reversible. We move from linear time to circular time, and then from circular time to spiral time. And spiral time is covenantal time. And covenantal time is the covenant in time between past, present, and future. There's a covenant in time itself between past, present, and future. That's covenantal time. That's sacred time. And so I actually have the capacity to return. I can actually go, but it's not, let me go slow, it's not mechanical. It's not a mechanical capacity, right? It's not a magic spell. It's not a trick. It's not a mechanized ritual, right? It's not a token of the church. There is actually a way to enter into time. So the way I get into circular time, I get into circular time through entering the eternal now. And the eternal now is the quality of time, which is the depth of the present, which is the true nature of true self, which doesn't take me out of the story. That's the mistake. True self is understood even by Osho. Osho made huge mistakes in his understanding of true self. True self is understood to take me out of the story. But I leave the story behind. No. In true self, I enter into this timeless time, into this placeless place. I move beyond time, but not beyond time entirely. I move beyond linear time. And I enter into the depth of time, which is a quality. So I want to create a new word that we've never used before. Time is, I'm going to put two words together that we have used. Time is a value quality. It's a quality of value, but it's a value quality. Does that make sense? Qualia, there's a quality to time. So there's a value quality in time. But the value and quality in time is not just what the Greeks called kairos. So when the Greeks talked about kairos, which shows up in the New Testament, kairos time is contrasted with chronos time. And kairos time is the flow of time. So Mikhail writes this book, Flow, right? He's essentially a business consultant, right? And he describes what the Greeks called kairos time, right? And kairos time is this quality of time. Kairos time is this quality of time. But it's not yet what we're talking about. The quality of time that we're describing is not just a quality, it's a time machine, right? It's not just a quality of time. It's a time machine, meaning I enter into the quality of time, but when I enter into that eternal now, when I engage in what we called last week nowing, I'm nowing. Be with me, not in the past. I'm nowing. When I enter into the now, I now can move backwards and forwards in time. So what does a prophet do? A prophet enters into the eternal now and then accesses the future. That's what prophecy is, right? Sometimes a child is granted special access for reasons I don't want to go into now. But that's what Christina Amlon's book is about. It's about her brother, Jay, who had some access to the eternal now, and he had a precognitive experience of the future. In this case, it was his own death, right, on his bike, chased by a green car. When I enter into the eternal now, I become a prophet. I can access the future. Prophecy and precognition are not the same, but they're not also completely unrelated. But I can also access the past. Meaning, now stay with me really closely, meaning this is like, it's wild. It's beautiful. In other words, it's not just that yesterday is in linear time, and I'm trapped in the shame of my mistakes from yesterday, or I'm trapped in the wounding, and I've got to go back and pretend to be talking to a 4-year-old, but I'm not 4, and I'm 93 today. I can't talk to my 4-year-old. I look good, don't I, for 93? Right? I can't talk to my 4-year-old. No, I can actually literally, ontologically, I can literally go back in time and actually talk to my 4-year-old. I can actually be my 4-year-old. I can actually have a conversation with them. I can enter into and that's what the therapist actually is supposed to do. What a true therapist will do is, now the true therapist can barely do this. I just talked 3 nights ago. I called one of my closest friends, who's on our board at the center, Lori Galperin, which is one of the best clinical therapists, right, I would say in the entire world today. And I was sharing this with Lori, that, and she's one of the most brilliant practitioners for, her and Mark for, decades now. Most brilliant clinicians practicing kind of the classical methods of going back and visiting the past. And I said to Lori that one of the reasons there's such a big recidivism rate, and I wanted to get her sense of it, and she completely concurred, is because in 99% of the time, neither the therapist nor the client actually believes that it's real. Because it can't be real, because there's only linear time. So how can you really go back? Until you actually get that actually you can enter into the eternal now, which the therapist almost never has access to. But you don't enter into the eternal now in order to just do work in the present. You enter into the eternal now because the eternal now is a time machine which gives you access to prophecy in the future and gives you access to yesterday in the past. That's called teshuvah, T-E. Let's get that word in again if we can. Teshuva. Teshuvah, I literally can return to that moment in time. I can literally return to that moment when I was 4 years old, when I was hurt and wounded, and I can return to the place where I made mistakes, even dramatic mistakes. And I can go inside. So let's say I'm talking about the category where I made mistakes. I made mistakes. So what happens is I step into the eternal now. And then from the eternal now, I return to the story. You get that? I go to the timeless, but the timeless time is the timeless time in relationship to linear time. And now I've entered into circle time. And circle time means the following. Circle time means there are portals into the future and past. So I enter into the quality of time. What's the portal? So there's different portals, right? So a portal, an anniversary is a portal. Does that make sense? A birthday is a portal. A holy day, which became a holiday, which we've lost access to what it really means, is a portal, right? When it's celebrating, right? Or it engages in a particular quality of time. Memory is a portal, right? Memory is not an outsourcing on my computer. I don't remember. It's stored in the memory. Memory is a form of activism. Memory is the place in which the past lives in the present. Does everyone get that? That's what memory is. Memory is a dynamic quality of the past that's alive in the present. And I can use memory as a quite literal time machine. And I can actually go back to that moment where I fucked up. And perhaps that pattern of recursive, right, collapses. And then I don't do magic, right, in the surface sense. I do the deep magic of Eros. So I go back and I don't turn away from the story. Did everyone get that? I turn towards the story. I actually go into the story. I feel the story. I realize I mistook. My take was false on the story. And I actually go into my will, into the feeling tone of my deepest interiority, and I re-feel the moment. And then I react. I reenact the moment. I refeel the moment. I refeel it. So the first step is, there's 3 steps. The first step is I have hakara. I go back to the story and I recognize the dynamic in the story. And I just want to tell you, anyone, if you want the best ticket on the stairway to heaven, this is it, right? Meaning the actual transformation, the actual purifying clarification of self, the actual transformation back into my original innocence, the actual evolution of self, which changes my karma forever. This is it. As I go back, I enter time through the eternal now. And I might enter it through true self-meditation. I might enter it through dance, true self-meditation. Right? I might enter it through ecstatic crying. Right? I might enter it through Eros. I might enter it through, but I enter into the depth of the moment of the now. And then, when I'm deep inside, I access memory. And then memory takes me back. Right? The first portal is the eternal now. Then within the eternal now, I don't clear my mind of the story. Do you get that? It's not true self-meditation. I'm beyond the story. No, I'm in the eternal now. I've entered through deep meditation. And now within that meditation, I now access memory and I go back to that moment of the story. Does everyone get that? And then when I go back to that moment of the story, step 1 is hakara. I recognize the dynamic in the story, actually see what's happening. And I can let go of shame because I'm about to fix it. I'm about to change it. I'm about to transform it. It's about to change. I go back directly to that moment of my pathological action or my pathological thought, right? Or the moment that I hurt someone, where I insulted someone, I violated them for reasons I don't even quite know, or I do know. I go back to that moment, I recognize the precise dynamic, and I'm unflinching, I'm unyielding, I'm brave, I'm courageous, I'm willing to be displeasing to myself in that moment. 1, 2, I have charata. So the first word is hakara, Hakara. I recognize the story, the dynamic in the story. The second, two, I have charata, Charata. Charata means remorse. Remorse is the opposite of narcissism. It's a genuine experience of remorse. It's not a passing, right? I can actually hold remorse. I'm devastated. I'm remorseful. I have deep, profound, not passing regret. I'm willing to live in that remorse. Not in a self-flagellating eternal way. In that moment, I cry. I cry. I have a genuine, or I cry silent tears or active tears, but I have a genuine experience of remorse. And then watch. And then Kabbalah, I receive the moment entirely. This is stage 3, Kabbalah. I receive everything that's happened. And Lehaba, Lehaba, I then rechart the present. I reconfigure the moment. I reenact the moment. I edit the moment. I re-author that moment of the story, right? I change the interiority of my will. I change my will, and my will is my love, right? I love differently. I find I've gotten lost in unlove. I find my way back into my ratzon, Ratzon, which means will, but it also means eros love. So I find my way back into the eros love that lives inside of me, and I love the person that I was engaged with in a way that I couldn't find. I love myself in a way that I couldn't find, right? And love, that quality of love, right, becomes the quill with the ink of love. With the quill of love, I rewrite the past. No, stay with me. Stay with me. Not as if, not make-believe. Now, here's the thing. Freud grows up in the lineage, but he doesn't know what to do with it. He's confused, right? The lineage for him is part of the kind of the opiate of the masses that Marx talked about. Religion is pre-modern and superstitious, and yet there's elements of the lineage that enter Freud. And Freud's entire group of colleagues in Vienna, all, with one exception, Jung, all the rest of them, are directly emergent. They've grown up in the lineage, either themselves or their fathers or their grandfathers at most. They've all, even if they can't access it directly, but in their body, heart, mind is teshuvah, is this notion of return, but they don't quite get the depth of it. It's kind of there in the background. And out of that comes, right, the modern therapeutic moment, which is about visiting the past. But since they are conscious materialists, the best they can do is describe that visiting of the past in terms of make-believe and theater and catharsis. There's value in that. But they actually don't get the ontology of the lineage because they're so busy rebelling against the lineage for quite good reasons. It needed rebelling against, it needed clarifying, that they can't actually access the interior subjective technology of teshuvah, which is a time machine. Teshuvah means I actually go back and I literally rewrite the moment. And now that moment, I want to get this straight. Now that moment has been rewritten, it doesn't exist anymore. Now, stay close. The effect of it exists. So let's say my repetitive pattern of violation is I was a swindler. I was an embezzler. I embezzled a whole lot of money. Now I've gone back and I've re-accessed those moments of embezzlement. I've reconfigured my will. I've clarified my desire. Right? I can literally erase those moments entirely. Right? Entirely. I can erase those moments entirely. Does that make sense? Nonetheless, the effect of the moment exists. So I have to fix the effect of the moment in the world. Of course I do. But in terms of the metaphysical stain on my innocence, that act has disappeared. It's gone. It's not, I'm going to be better in the future. I've gone back and I've literally transformed it. Now, what allows me to transform it is love itself. Right? In other words, love itself is literally underneath time. And that's what I was pointed to in Ravelli last week, right? What Ravelli points out in his work, Ravelli, a student of Wheeler in physics, is that actually time at its core is not foundational. But that's not just Ravelli's idea. That's the fundamental idea of the Zohar, the Book of Radiance, at the very center of the lineage. That is to say, it's something like as follows, okay? For Ravelli, underneath time is relationality. For the lineage, underneath all the individuated values, the first principles and first values that we talk about in this book, first principles and first values, right? All of the individuated first principles and first values emerge from a field of Eros value. So there's a field of Eros value underneath all the individuated first principles and first values. And although Eros is also a first principle and a first value, Eros appears in two ways. Eros is an active first principle and first value, but Eros also appears as the field of Eros value, that is value beneath values. There's a field of love, or what Ravelli is calling relationality. But Ravelli is not expressing relationality in terms of value, right? Because he's doing the physics. He does the physics well, but then he's also a dogmatic materialist having nothing to do with the physics. So for him, relationality can't be valid because he has a dogmatic position that value is not real. But that's not his department. That's his department's physics. The lineage, the interior sciences obviously understand that value is real for all the ways we've talked about. And so the field of Eros value is beneath time, right? So time emerges from the field of Eros value. Does that make sense? That's how both Ravelli, talking about the physics side of it, and the interior sciences, right, talk about time. Time is not co-primordial with Eros value. Eros value is underneath time. Do you get that? It's a very big deal. So if I access my will, which is my love, which is my love of the beloved, which is my love of self, which is my love of reality, which is my love of value, love allows me to get underneath time. So when I engage teshuvah, this return, but I engage it not out of fear, but I'm afraid, but I've got to cover myself by teshuvah, but I actually engage it because I feel this yearning of love. I feel this longing of love. I feel alienated from value. I feel separated from source, right? I'm desperate to return. My experience is this desperation to return. I'm filled with remorse, and at the same time, I'm powerful because I know I can go back and change the past. So when love becomes the wings of my chariot, when I actually allow my will to be suffused with this desperate desire to love, this desperate desire to be in integrity and aligned with the field of Eros, which is the field of Eros value. So I then access the field of Eros value, which lives in me. Now this is critical. This puts it all together. The last 3 minutes. It's always in the last 3 minutes it comes together. Do you notice I insisted earlier on that the true self, is not just the field of awareness. So this wasn't me just, no, it's critical. True self is the eternal now. The eternal now in time, and the human being lives as true self. But true self is not just awareness. True self is the field of love. It's the field of Eros. It's the field of desire. It's the field of allurement. It's the field of the yearning for union. It's the yearning for intimacy. It's the desperation for intimate communion. So when I go into my desperation for intimate communion, my desperation to touch and be touched in mad love, to touch hearts, to fix that which was broken, when I feel the pain of the alienation and I let it in and I step into my true self, which is the field of love, the field of Eros, the eternal now is not neutral. The eternal now is Eros value itself. The eternal now is the field of Eros value. So when I enter into the field of Eros value through the love that burns in me, through the flame of, let me just say it, the flame of love is eternity, that burns uniquely in me, that desire to overcome the alienation, I feel shamed and alienated from the field of value. But I know that I can return. I know I can go back. And so I'm drawn, I'm desperate, I run. Ratso, I run, which means will, right? My love, the power, the flame of my love, I run towards that moment. And that running, that will, that love is the time machine. It is the portal that brackets time. Love takes me underneath time. Love brackets, literally ontologically, love brackets the time-space continuum. Wow. And I go back and I rewrite time. I want to end with the story. And I know we took a lot of time today, and I apologize, everyone. And thank you, whoever stayed. If anyone's, I don't know if anyone's with me at all, but if anyone's with me, thank you. Okay, I want to go back and tell you a story. I'm going to end with this. And it's a story that we've told before. But now all of a sudden it will make sense. And it's a story about, and I told it just a few weeks ago. It's a story about this man who's just, gotten married. And he's madly in love with his new wife, and they're desperate to have a child, but they can't have a child. So they go to the master, who's the holy seer of Lublin. And they say to him, like, oh my God, we can't have a child. And the holy seer, who can see from one end of the world to another, looks deeply in the man's soul, and he says, before you came here to Lublin, you lived someplace else, didn't you? And he names the town, and he says, and you were engaged before, weren't you? He says, yes, I was. He says, and you broke the engagement. He says, yeah, I did. Yeah, and it must have broken her heart. And he says, yes, it must have. I left town right afterwards, but I'm sure it broke her heart. He says, just listen to this. The Holy Seer says, you can't have a child until you fix the past. He says, but how am I going to find her? Her name was Fagala. He said, how am I going to find her? Where is she? And he says, I don't know. You find her. And he says, but you're the Holy Seer of Lublin. Please, he says, desperately help me. So the Holy Seer says, go to the market in Leipzig and look for her there. And he goes to Leipzig, and he packs up all of his wares of his trade, and he sets up like a stall in the market of Leipzig, and he's desperately looking for Fagala, to ask her forgiveness, to receive her blessing, so he can go on and have a child with his new beloved wife. And you know how it is when you're looking for someone, and you see someone from behind, and you tap them on their shoulder, and they turn around, and it's someone else, and he's looking for her for 3 months, day and night. And he sells his wares, and he looks for her every place around the market at night, and he can't find her. It's the last day of the market, and he's packing up, and he's failed. And then all of a sudden there's this storm, unexpected, this thunderstorm and lightning and pouring rain, and he runs to go under an awning, under a cover, and he's there as the rain comes in, and then it's quite crowded, and someone else comes in, and he steps back to make room, and he hears the voice, and she says, you always step back, you always step away when I come in. It's her, it's Fagala. He can't quite believe it, and her voice is somewhat strange, and it's raining, and he knows this God, he can barely see her, and he's desperate, and he says, please, 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 I'm so sorry that I broke the engagement. I'm so devastated and sorry, and I apologize, but please would you give me a blessing so I can go on and marry, and I've married and have a child and have a good life, and I can only do it with your blessing. I can only do it if you forgive me. And she says, I'll forgive you, but under one condition. You've got to go back to the place we were raised, and my brother is about to marry off his daughter, and he has no money. I bring all of the profits you've made, in your time here at the fair. I've been watching you, and bring them to my brother for dowry for his daughter. And he says, of course. And he says, but can I walk you someplace? And before I go. And she says, you can't go where I'm going. And he can barely hear her, and he's on his horse, and his wagon, actually I'll ride a horse with the wagon, and he just tears, right? 3 days and 3 nights, he barely stops, and he gets to the town, the shtetl, right? The hamlet in which They were both raised, and he's now covered in mud. 3 days he hasn't slept. He looks like a crazy man, and he bursts in. He recognizes the town. He hasn't been there for 20 years, and he bursts into the home, right, of the one who would have been his brother-in-law. And his brother-in-law doesn't recognize him. He's so splattered in mud and disheveled. And he says, "Here, I've got this money for you, for your daughter." And he looks at him, with the guy who would have been the brother-in-law, and he says, "Don't make fun of me, and I don't know who you are, and get out of my house. It's enough that I have to marry my daughter, and I'm destitute, and you come here to mock me." He says, "No, no, 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 no." He says, "Look at me." He says, and the brother-in-law that would have been looks at him and recognizes him, and he says, "No, Fagala sent me, and she told me to bring you this money." And he just pours the money on the table. And he tells him the story to his brother-in-law, and his brother-in-law looks at him. And he says, "Fagala died just a week after you broke the engagement. Fagala died." Love takes us underneath time. Love suspends the currents of time. Love traverses the gap between worlds. Love takes us into the pulse of eternity. And love allows us to heal all shame and to heal all wounds, because we enter into circular time. When we enter into circular time, right, it means we access through the eternal now and through the field of unique love that lives uniquely in myself, through the portal of memory. I go back to that moment and I rewrite my mistakes. I reauthor my story, right? I heal the wounding. It's not as if I'm holding the inner child. I am holding the inner child, literally, talking to him directly and pouring into him. It changes everything. It changes everything. I'll finish with this. There's just two things, then we're done. But I just want you to just have both of these things. And if it's just me and a couple of people, that's totally fine. But just stay with me, okay? It's just the last two small things. So I remember watching a Twilight Zone. Remember Twilight Zone? Right? Twilight Zone. So the father's a boxer, the son's at home. His father loses badly. And then his son enters into his deepest will and just loves his father so much. He loves his father so insanely that time goes backwards. And the fight is refought. And his father wins. And his father comes home and he tells his father what happened. And his father doesn't believe him. He tells his father, "You have to believe me. I loved you so much, Dad. I loved you so much that the time stopped." And I rewrote the story, and his father doesn't believe him. And then time goes back to what it was. There's a holy day called the Day of At-One-ment, where I become at one with time. For 25 hours, I enter into spiral time. And I literally evolve the story. I literally transform. Right? I literally enter into covenantal time and I rewrite history. So at the end of those 25 hours, it's 25-hour full fast. Right? There's a prayer I say, and in the prayer I say, "Slachanu avinu ki chatanu," I say, "God, forgive me, I've sinned." So the masters say, "I don't understand. You just spend 25 hours in utter purity, right? On the inside of the inside, right? The fast just ended. You've been in full prayer, full innocence, full purity. What could you have possibly done wrong?" So the masters say the one thing you could do wrong is you could not believe that it's true. You could not believe that love has the power to get underneath the space-time continuum. The space-time continuum, which physics is now realizing, right, is but one dimension, linear time. But there's a deeper quality, the quality of eternity, which I enter through the eternal now that lives as my true self. Time and self participate in the same quality. And I literally rewrite history, right, in the ink of love and the ink of Eros. Like that. So I hope we evolve the source code. I hope we revivify time. I hope we began to rewrite the story of time, right, as part of the new story of value. Krista.
So beautiful, Marc. Thank you so much. I see people in the chat box writing tears. I'm sitting here with goosebumps. It's so beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just want to sit here in silence and just be present with that. But also, I want to take us actually another small step. I know that we are way over time, but I do want to take 2 minutes for something very important, because we spoke about the mystery school in the beginning, and I'm going to close with that as well, because we need to ask ourselves, how do we make this real in the fabric of our own lives? How do we practice this together, face to face, and also in our bodies? So I want to share with you that at the Mystery School, next to Dr. Marc Gafni sharing these beautiful teachings with us, these deep transmissions with us, we also have a beautiful embodiment practice where Dr. Christina Kincaid, who is Marc Gafni's partner and also the co-author of this amazing book, A Return to Eros, is also giving beautiful, beautiful sessions, workshops. It's hard to give a name for it. It's de-armoring sessions where we actually get to practice in our body this journey from homo armor to homo amor. So I want to give you a taste, because we can talk about Mystery School, but I really want to give you a taste of what that feels like and what that looks like at the Mystery School. So I'm going to share a 2-minute clip. It's very short, I promise, just for us to feel what that might feel like.
The work is to actually unblock and unarmor ourselves so that we can have this the fullness of our being and connect to our divinity.
We want to arouse each other to our greatness, to our goodness, to our truth, right, to our integrity, right? And that is not about sexuality. It's about Eros. It's about the Eros that's at the core of everything.
We're trying to clear this central channel, right? So that you can actually allow the energy to move freely through your body.
You have an embodied knowing of what it feels like to be lived as love. And from there, all is healed. It sounds kind of radically simple, but it's just true.
Sign up now, because you will get an early bird price until January 20th. So there's absolutely no reason not to sign up. If you have any hesitations, if you need any help getting here, whatever you need, talk to us, because we really need to be there in person together to do this work together. And it's not only for our own transformation. As we always say, my transformation is the transformation of the whole. And so we're coming together in this portal, not like underneath time, not only for ourselves, but to really make this healing, to do this evolutionary fixing for the sake of the whole. So let's show up together and do that.